Greetings everybody, welcome to another segment of Recovery TV, a special parenting edition. Today we're going to talk about how to not pass down sexual shame to our children. You don't want to miss this. Thank you for tuning in today for this special segment of Recovery TV for parents, where today we're going to talk about breaking this cycle of sexual shame so we don't pass it down to our children. But before we begin, I want to remind you to subscribe to our channel and ring that bell so that you're notified when we post more quality videos such as this one. So today we're going to address a very sensitive topic in general, which is parenting. So I'd like to give a little bit of a disclaimer on that. As you're listening to my thoughts and as I'm talking about certain behaviors of parents, I don't want you to think that any way, shape, or form this makes you a bad parent if some of these things resonate with you. The reality is that there's a pool of people in this world that just do parenting exceptionally well. And then there's a small pool of this world of people that should have never become parents to begin with. Most of us are going to fall in the middle somewhere. Because the reality is, if you're watching this video, you probably fall on that good parenting scale somewhere because you're taking time and effort out of your day to improve yourself. And guess what? That is something good parents do. So I would like you to remember that as we go forward. So today I'm going to talk about 4 common practices that parents are doing in our culture that further exacerbate sexual shame, which continues that legacy with their children and their children's children, and so on and so forth. But let's talk about this idea of sexual shame to begin with. I want you to remember that it's not just a me thing or a you thing. It's not just a family thing. It's a culture thing. We are contending with cultural messages. And a lot of us have grown up in a culture where the message that's being sent about sex and sexuality is sex is dirty, sex is bad, save it for someone you love. That doesn't sound really good. That doesn't sound like a healthy perspective of sex and sexuality. And so sometimes we fall prey to that because we are living in this culture. And so I'm going to go over these 4 common practices, and I encourage you to watch to the end because after each common practice, I'm going to give a power tip. Common practice number 1 is that parents are often using slang terminology to refer to the male and female genitalia. We're sending a message of shame to our children. And it's not necessarily the terms itself that does it. It's your discomfort with the proper terminology that does it. You're sending them a message that says there's something dirty or something wrong or something not right about this part of the body that I can't even speak it out loud. But yet I don't talk about my arm that way. I don't talk about my nose that way or my forehead. I actually use the proper terminology for those. And I feel no shame when I do it. But when I say the word penis or I say the word vagina, I might whisper it. Or I might get an awkward look on my face, or I might blush. Or, as in most cases, I'll just use a slang word. And again, that further exacerbates shame with your children. So power tip number 1, start today using the proper terminology for male and female genitalia, which is penis and vagina. And then of course there are other parts of our body that we've identified as sexual. Make sure you're using the proper terminology for those too. Now your children might look at you weird. They might look at you funny and ask, why are you saying it that way? And I think that's wonderful because now you can take the opportunity to start a discussion with them on why it's important to use proper terminology when referring to those body parts. And this leads me right into common practice number 2, which is parents often are not having a discussion of sex or about sex and sexuality with their kids. So a lot of you watching this, your parents didn't talk about it at all. It just simply was not discussed or brought up. Some of you might have had the sex talk. And sometimes we talk about that with a sense of pride when our parents gave us the sex talk. But why is it just one talk? What's so wrong with sex that we can't have a discussion about it? That we can't have a series of talks throughout our childhood? And so again, the silent nature of this topic in families further exacerbates shame, which continues that legacy of sexual shame with your children. Let's break that today. So power tip number 2 is start a discussion. Make it a discussion. Be intentional with it. I would encourage you to try to talk to each one of your kids at least one time a year about something related to sex and sexuality. If you go to our website, which is familysolutionsok.com, I've written a blog on this matter, and I've actually listed several topics to help get you started. So I'll put a link to that in the description of this video below. The common practice number 3 that we often see in our culture, and that is parents will often shame their children for sexual touch. So the way our biology is that we have more nerve endings in the penis and in the vagina than any other part of our body. And so what that means, when we touch that part of the body, it feels good. And so kids learn that from a very early age, maybe within the first few months of life, that they discover that they have a certain body part. When they touch it, it feels good. So naturally, their hands will go there. And so many times when a kid is caught with their hands in their pants, they're getting scolded and they're getting yelled at and they're getting in trouble for that behavior. And so power tip number 3 is stop it. A child should never get in trouble for touching their genitals. But what you can do is politely and calmly and respectfully instruct them on the proper time and place for such self-exploration. And so if you do feel the need to enforce a consequence because they are disobeying you in that they're not paying attention to when and where they are exploring their body parts, make sure they understand that they are not getting in trouble for the actual act of touching their genitals. But again, I can't reiterate enough, do not yell, scream, scold, or even embarrass your child for touching their genitals. I often receive questions from parents of adolescent kids about this issue of sexual touch, because now we're venturing into the world of masturbation. I don't have time to go into that in this segment, but I did address it some in the blog that I wrote on this matter, which I have linked below in the description of this video. All right, let's move on to the 4th and final common parenting practice that further exacerbates sexual shame in our families. And that is, parents are not conveying the beauty of sex and sexuality when they are talking about it with their kids. So a lot of us are growing up in families, especially religious families, that are just saying, don't have sex, don't have sex, don't have sex, wait till you're married, wait till you're married, wait till you're married. So the message that we're getting is, sex is dirty, sex is bad, save it for someone you love. Please don't misunderstand me. It is important to talk about being responsible with our sex and sexuality. It's important to talk about safe sex practices. In religious families, it's important to talk about the morality component with sex. But it is also very, very important to talk about how beautiful and wonderful it is, as your children someday will grow up and they will enter into those relationships and they will have a sexual relationship, and you want it to be very special and wonderful for them. So don't let your fear consume you. Push aside your shame and remember that sex and our sexuality is a beautiful, wonderful thing, and we need to remember to convey that message to our children, which is the 4th and final power tip. Appreciate you watching this segment today on a very sensitive topic, and I hope to see you back next time. Thanks.